sensitive to the tomato product. So we're not going to use tomatoes in this chili, but you will need your crock pot. So I have here, this is half of a beef chuck roast, and we're going to cut this into pieces. Now this is one of those times, you know, I know it's convenient to get that package of beef stew meat that's already cut up in the store, but number one, you're still going to have to cut those into smaller pieces. And number two, you do not know what cuts of beef are in that. That is typically made from scrap when they do the cutting, the butcher does the cutting. And I mean, and by scrap, I don't mean discard stuff, but where they do the trimmings of round steak or round roast, eye of round, bottom round, some chuck maybe. I mean, it could even have, you know, filet mignon trimmings in it. You don't know. And for a recipe like this, you really want chuck. It has intense beefy flavor. It's absolutely delicious. So what I do is buy a chuck roast and cut it up. Now, if you don't have this and all you have is the stew meat, by all means use it, but know that you're gonna need to cut it into smaller pieces. This is about a pound, maybe a little bit over, but you use as much as you want. I'm gonna cut off any of the big chunks of fat, but you want some of the fat in your chili because that makes it taste amazing. So we're gonna cut this into small, bite-sized pieces. So what I do is cut it into strips, and then sometimes I will even cut those strips in half. You see the veining of the fat in that? That's flavor. That's what you want, and that's what chuck brings. I think chuck makes an amazing pot roast. It makes a delicious chili. It makes a delicious stew, beef stew. To me, it's just a versatile piece of meat. It's wonderful. You want your pieces to be about like this. Let me see if I can get you a couple of them that are small. You see how small that is? That's what you want. We're gonna put that in the bottom of our crock pot. You can use a crock pot liner if you have one. I use those at home all the time. I love them. That makes cleanup so easy. But if you don't, that's okay. We're just gonna cut this up into bite-sized pieces. You could use, I'll tell you another thing, if you don't wanna get the chuck roast, maybe you're cooking this for 1 or 2 people, like that piece right there, I would leave that in because that's gonna melt down and it's gonna bring in a lot of flavor. But if you don't have a whole chuck roast, or maybe you're cooking for a smaller number of people, the chuck eye steak that you can get in the butcher counter or in the, you know, the meat section is cut from the chuck. You would just need to cut it in half and take that gristle out, but that's actually a delicious cut of steak. You can even get those and grill them. And they're very tender and very juicy, but they do make a wonderful soup or stew. Also, if you're making a smaller quantity, the chuck eye steak. I need to do a program one day showing the different cuts of beef and what's the better application for it, because different cuts of meat require different types of cooking. Chuck is, again, one of my favorites, but it requires a longer braise type cooking application, and that just breaks down the collagen and the fibers in the beef, and it becomes just melt in your mouth delicious. When you're buying your chuck roasts, search the meat counter and look for the one that has the least amount of the big chunks of fat. Now, all chuck is gonna have some fat. That's just the way it is. That's the cut, that's what makes it so delicious, quite frankly. But you don't want to have the big chunks. If you have really big chunks of fat in your chuck roast, just cut them out. Because like this, for instance, if you did not want that, I mean, you could cut that out. You know, it's okay. But the little bits in between like that, leave that in, because that's gonna melt down into liquid fat. It's gonna add a tremendous amount of flavor. Fat is flavor. You know, we went through years of thinking that fat was bad, and you know, some of it is. But a little bit of fat in your diet is delicious, and it's just amazing, and it adds so much flavor to your foods. Now, we've got our meat down in the bottom. We're gonna need an onion. I thought I had a knife. There we go. I did have a knife. I used it on the beef. We'll go ahead and cut our onion up. We use the same knife. It's going in the same dish. This is 1 medium onion. You can use frozen if you have it. If you don't have any fresh onions, you can use onion powder. Would be delicious, would be fine. Whatever you have that works for you. Pardon my, I'm just dealing with allergies, as a lot of people are. I tell you what, they're about to get the best of me some days. So curl your fingers back, cut it into dices, and then when you get down there, just cut it into smaller pieces. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it cut into small pieces. If you leave the root end on it, it allows the layers of the onion to stay together. Just pop that right straight into your crock pot. This is one of those dishes that you can have your ingredients prepped, turn it on in the morning, and when you get home, you've got dinner done. And a good dinner. And a healthy dinner. And if you wanted to make this vegetarian, you could. Leave out the meat. You could use like a vegetable broth. I'm not gonna put any broth in there with this recipe because the beef will, of course, make delicious beef broth as it cooks. You'll see as we go along. All right, I have, the onion's making my eyes water. I have 2 cans of undrained, I like dark kidney beans, but you use what you have. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt, maybe a teaspoon. Not too much. Half a teaspoon or so of pepper. We're gonna add some chili powder, a couple of teaspoons, but use your discretion on how much you like. A little bit of sage, not too much, just a little bit, maybe half a teaspoon of that is all you need. Ooh, my eyes. Now, I'm gonna show, well, let me get this cut. We do need about, this pepper was huge. I used half of it for something else, but you are gonna need some diced pepper. I have a red one. You can use a green one if you have it. You could use jarred red peppers. You could use whatever you like. If you don't like peppers, leave it out. It adds a lot of flavor. Got too many there. Definitely adds flavor, adds vitamins and minerals and just color. It's just beautiful. This is a very colorful chili. And red pepper happens to be my favorite, so that's what I'm using. But you use what you like. Now, I want to show you a little trick I learned. Amazed me. I didn't believe it at first. I thought, that can't possibly work. But I'm here to tell you, it does. Now, I am left-handed, for those of you that don't know that. And the world is made for right-handed people. So I'm gonna show you a little, I'll tell you what, let me take a quick break. Just gonna kind of clean up here. When I come back, I'm gonna show you a trick using a can opener on your cans that you're not gonna believe what you're seeing. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, now, before we do our little trick that I just blew my mind, I am gonna add a little bit of garlic to it. I'm just using the pre-minced kind because that's what I have. It's fine. Put this up. Now, again, I'm gonna go back to my story. I'm left-handed, and this world is made for a right-handed person. I'm just telling you, totally is. If you're left-handed, you get my meaning. These things are hard for me to use sometimes. It just is. Scissors are another thing that are made for right-handed people. Yes, it makes a difference. Notebooks, whole nother story. Desks in school, all of it. But anyway, instead of doing this, which is what we all tend to do, you put it, put it down on there, clamp it, and turn it. Put it on the top, shut it, and go around. Some cans are a little easier than others. Go around and around and around. And looky there. The whole top comes off. It doesn't fall down into your can. I love it. I just think it's so cool. I'll do the little green chilies. That was just one can of whole kernel corn, undrained. Do the same thing. I mean, let me show you the difference. I think we've all used. Now, sometimes you will get the label, but that's okay. You can toss that out. Just make sure you put the cutter part on the outside. I've never done it on the little can of green chilies. And twist. You know how when you open a can, sometimes the lid just falls right down into the can? Some cans are easier than others. This one does not. Whoop, didn't go far enough. And the whole top will come off. Well, most of the time. Put that in there. Minus, and then you don't have to touch that lid. Let's get that out. And I think one of the little strings of the thing. But anyway, cool little hint. The little cans aren't quite as easy, I don't think. But the big cans, it works great on. Now, all of our ingredients are in here. We're just gonna stir this up. Remember, we did not add any water. We did not add any broth. We didn't add anything because the liquid from the beef is going to make our broth. And oh, if you could just smell that. Lid on, low for 7 hours, 8 hours, high for like 4 to 5. This crock pot has an automatic setting, most of them do now, that will go to warm when it's over so that you don't overcook. Now we're gonna make a delicious bread to go alongside. One of my favorite breads, or one of my favorite little treats are corn fritters. I love them. You know, you make a batter and then you drop it into hot oil by the spoonfuls and you just, fry it on both sides. They're wonderful. They do take a little time. So we're gonna make a bread, a corn fritter bread. You need a couple of eggs, and I wanna break those up just a little bit. Little BB whisk. Just break those up just a little bit. I like to get my eggs broken before I add anything else to it. You need some sour cream, 8 ounces or so of sour cream. Don't buy the fat-free stuff. Get the fat in the sour cream and cheeses. Dairy needs that fat. I'm telling you, it makes a world of difference. We're gonna stir those together. Let me use my bigger little spatula here. Get that distributed. Okay, we're gonna add some salt, just a little bit. I have a stick of butter that I've melted, but I'm gonna let that cool just a minute because I don't wanna scramble the eggs. And if you put hot butter into eggs, you're gonna get some scrambling, and I don't want that. You need 2 boxes. I use Jiffy, it's like 50 cents. It's not expensive at all, and it really is good. A couple of boxes of Jiffy. I make a corn pudding out of this stuff too that's really good as a side dish. It's got a lot of cheese and stuff in it. It's really good. We're gonna need 2 boxes. You will wanna make the full recipe of this because you're gonna wanna eat it. Stir that together. Then we're gonna need, let me get this out of my way. Your oven will need to be preheated, excuse me, to 350 degrees. You're gonna need, I'm gonna show you the difference, okay? We did the other one. You see what happens here? That would go down in that can if I didn't stop right now. And then you've got a sharp edge. I just prefer the other. I think it makes it neater and it's less dangerous. And for whatever reason, I am clumsy in the kitchen. I always end up getting cut, getting hurt somehow, as opposed to this. I just prefer this. Ever since I found this out, I'm like, this is amazing to me. The bigger cans are easier. See, that comes off and you just don't have that sharp edge. You don't even have to touch the lid. I do need to drain this for this recipe. I'll just use my hands. Clean hands are your best tools anyway. Doesn't have to be completely, just get the most of it out. And we're gonna add that to our batter. Then we're gonna add our melted butter because we've got other ingredients in there so the butter won't scramble the eggs. And then stir it all together. You will need like a 9 by 13 pan. Just stir it all together. I'm telling you, this is so good. It's one of my favorites. If you want it to be a little sweeter, I don't, but if you wanted it to be a tiny bit sweeter, if you like a really sweet cornbread type dish, you could add a tablespoon or so of sugar. I don't want it any sweeter. I think it's sweet enough, but you do what you like. I sprayed this with non-stick cooking spray. We're going to put this in here, pop it in the oven, 350 degrees for about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. I would check it at 30 by inserting a toothpick in the center, and if that toothpick comes out clean, then you know it's done. But if it comes out with wet lumps on it, you'll know you need to let it go 10 more minutes. I've made this recipe several times, and sometimes it needs, depending on the oven, my oven at home, I need 40 minutes. The oven here, 30. I don't understand the difference. They're both set at the same temperature, but whatever. So we're gonna pop this in my oven, 350 degrees, and we will check it in 30 minutes. I'm gonna clean up, and when I come back, we're gonna make a delicious creamed corn recipe, because today's program is all about corn. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. Now our bread is in the oven, our chili is in the crock pot, and we're gonna make another dish using corn. I have here just about 4 tablespoons or so of butter that I've melted, and I'm gonna add frozen corn, 2 bags. These are 12-ounce bags. And I'm just going to get the corn all coated with butter. Remember, our program today is talking about corn, one of our favorite ingredients. Now, over here, I have just a small jar of roasted red peppers. I'm gonna cut them into bite-sized pieces. This is just jarred roasted peppers. If you have peppers that you wanna make yourself, go right ahead. Roasted peppers are so good. And don't worry if you get the charring, a little bit of that charring on there, it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. There's some all over them. That's flavor. You can make your own roasted peppers by taking any pepper, red, green, yellow, orange, whatever you have, putting them in a hot oven, say 400 degrees. Let them roast in there until they are black. And then you take them out. Takes about, depending on your oven, 20 minutes or so. Put them in a bowl, cover them with something to allow the steam, plastic wrap or something. Let them steam for 10 or 15 minutes. Then take the wrap off, and the outside comes right, the skin of the pepper comes right off, and what you've got left is a delicious roasted vegetable that is out of this world good. These are so good in so many things, and they are just a natural with corn. That was just a small jar. It had 2 big peppers in it. I'm gonna add my peppers to my corn. This is also a very pretty dish. Don't waste any of those peppers. Then we're gonna add about half a can of evaporated milk. I've got the other half here in this container. Evaporated milk, or you could use heavy cream. I'm gonna add because it's frozen corn and it's probably not that sweet. If you were using fresh corn, you would not need to do this. I'm gonna add a couple of packs. Now, I like to use sugar substitute because I do watch my sugar intake, but if you wanna use sugar, you know, about a teaspoon or so of sugar, just to kind of sweeten that corn up a little bit. Sometimes frozen corn, unless you get the super sweet frozen, is not as sweet as the regular corn can be. So we want to stir that in. Want to add a little bit of salt, about just a, you know, half a teaspoon or so of salt is fine. Then we've got the other half of the evaporated milk, and we want to add about 2 teaspoons, maybe 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon of cornstarch to that, and we're gonna mix that together. Stir this up. This goes together very, very, very quickly. When it comes to a bubble, just like that, you can see the corn or the liquid, the milk is came up to a simmer. My voice is not wanting to cooperate today. You always want to add a cornstarch mixture to something that's already at a simmer. Add that cornstarch mixture to your corn, and it will thicken up in just a couple of minutes. Now, the frozen corn really just needs heating. The roasted red peppers just need heating. So what I want to do now is let that simmer for, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes until the liquid evaporates some and the cornstarch thickens the butter and the evaporated milk up. So we're just gonna let that go uncovered for about 3 minutes, and then you're gonna have a delicious creamed corn dish that just takes minutes to make with your pantry staple of frozen corn. Alrighty, now everything is done. I wanted to show you, here is the chili. You see how pretty it is? You've got all of the tender chunks of beef. You've got your corn, your beans, your red pepper, your onions. And I don't know, you can't really see down in there, but there is a lot of juice that beef makes on its own. So you really do not need to add anything. Here's our corn. You see that cornstarch just thickened that right up. Oh, it's so good. You see it just takes a minute. I like to add a little pepper to mine because you know me, I like pepper. I just do. Not everybody does, but I do. I think it just adds a lot of flavor to it. Then, of course, our wonderful corn fritter bread, which is kind of like a cornbread, but it's very, very moist, very, very good, perfect with your chili. If you wanted to have some sour cream on top of that, you absolutely could. If you wanted to add a little bit of cheddar cheese to that, you could. I like my chili and stews and soups and things like that plain with my cornbread. I would crumble my cornbread up and put that in there. So good. So there you go. 3 easy, quick, delicious, inexpensive meals that you can make, or dishes that you can make with an everyday ingredient called corn. Thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.